Healthcare professionals who can't treat and diagnose a patient from anywhere in the world are going to lose as we all move toward remote care for patients with artificial intelligence. Remote care services for patients has taken a long journey, right? But we're finally here. This is becoming the standard use of care when it comes to healthcare around the world. And that process is only accelerated due to the adoption of artificial intelligence tools. Let's talk about one specialty in particular, radiologists. For many don't know, radiologists look at charts and determine in images and help physicians diagnose patients, looking at x-rays. Radiologists traditionally had worked within the hospital or the clinic and providing feedback one-on-one with the doctors that they work with. The digitalization of imaging, such as CT, MRI scans, in the late 20th century set the foundation for remote access to these type of imaging. And so the creation of DICOM or PACS systems in the 1980s and 1990s really opened the door for high quality digital storage of remote radiological studies. This is so important because this allowed for practices to start using teleradiology to submit these images wherever in the world. It really became a core part of delivering care, especially in US and other parts of the world like Australia and Europe, because now the radiologists can interpret studies remotely, often from home or even in other continents. COVID-19 further accelerated the adoption of radiology, given the need for social distancing and offsite work. And then finally, with the AI revolution, radiology became the first medical specialty to widely adopt AI, driven by its digital-first workflows. 2025, 43% of radiologists reported using AI, up from 20% in 2019, with 90% of organizations having at least some AI deployment in imaging. So organizations that are not making this transition are being left behind. I want to ask you a question. Are you ready for your healthcare organization to go toward a remote care first model powered by artificial intelligence? I'm going to be able to walk you through how we're talking to healthcare organizations every day on how they can make this transition and really change their mindset around what it's going to take to move in this direction. I can give you tactical tips, but it's really about the mindset of what it means to go from where you're treating patients now to the future of where it's going. And you really don't want to be left behind. So I'm going to talk about 3 areas. First, I'm going to talk about why you must embrace change and how to think about change. Next, I'm going to talk about the key ingredient that makes change possible, an investment. And finally, I'm going to talk about tactical strategies you can implement now that will work in your healthcare and medical practices. My name is Theo Harvey. I'm a serial entrepreneur that went from a lowly employee to CEO of a multi-million-dollar healthcare organization that I run from my home. I raised over $1 million from venture capitalists and other investors, and work with large organizations like Cisco Systems, AT&T, Charles Barkley Organization, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Google. My mission is to help healthcare professionals prepare for the new normal before it's too late. Let's talk a little bit about how you must embrace change. The way I think about this is that remote care for your patients is just really a new way of thinking. Traditionally, doctors and medical professionals went to school to kind of see patients in the office and fix a specific ailment. This whole structure of fee for service, seeing a patient, getting paid for seeing them, right? That was traditional use of medicine for years. I mean, it even goes back to when doctors would go visit the patients in their homes, right? And getting paid a fee for seeing the patient no matter where the patient lived. There are 2 trends that are upending this old way of treating patients. One is like real world cases of patients who have shown that they need to take care of the healthcare away from clinicians. If you never heard this term, white coat syndrome, or white coat hypertensive, this is a very real case for a lot of patients who suffer from anxiety anytime they're in front of a physician or a healthcare professional, right? And what that means is typically these patients suffer from higher or elevated hypertension in front of a healthcare professional, which is not the same use cases when they're at home. In some cases, this can affect about 10 to 50% of the general population. And the studies have shown that about 43% may become truly hypertensive over 10 years if this is not corrected. This is a huge issue. Second, the rise of value-based care. This is the way of treating the whole patient. And this was developed around the Affordable Care Act, ways to incentivize practitioners and other doctors to treat the whole patient, right? And making sure you do preventative methods to treat them and stay out of the hospital. This has become more and more center stages because it is lowering and bending the cost curve of healthcare because it can get totally expensive over time. So this means that healthcare professionals have to create proactive treatment plans to to manage chronic conditions that you can never get rid of, but you can only manage, like blood pressure, diabetes, COPD, and others. Are you implementing strategies to prevent white coat syndrome now in your organization? Are you looking at how you can increase the value of your medical practice with value-based care models? If not, this is so important because you need to embrace the changes for your medical practice. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the story. How many of you heard the book, Who Moved My Cheese? This was written by Dr. Spencer Johnson, who was actually a medical doctor. The story Who Moved My Cheese is really a parable, if you will, about adapting to change in work and life, right? It's a story that centers around four characters, four mice, who experience a situation where their cheese that they were used to getting inside this maze is no longer there. So you had Sniff, Scary, Him, and Haw. And when the cheese disappears, each character responded differently. And it kind of relates to how human beings are kind of relate to change sometimes. For instance, Sniff, he quickly noticed when the cheese supply was getting low. So he started to move only when it was necessary, right? So he was anticipating that the cheese was going to be gone and he had to do something beforehand. Second, Scurry, when the cheese disappears, he started to rapidly move down the maze to find the next source of cheese before, too late. He was driven by his decisiveness to determine what's the next step and how he can move forward. You had Him, who really felt entitled that, my cheese will always be there. It should always be there. Just refused to change and adapt. And, he just insisted that things will just go back to normal. He was defined by his rigidness. And then last but not least, Hall. He eventually kind of examined himself and realized, like, look, I'm fearful of the change, but, I got to let go of the past and embrace the new future. And then he goes off and really learns how to grow from there and look for the cheese. And that really was a core component of someone who started resistant change and grew from that to embrace it. I want to ask you, when the environment changed, the mice who changed were the ones who gained the new cheese. The lesson there is really only those who change with change will win. Let me say that again. Only those who change with change will win. If you look at this story, just ask yourself honestly, who are you in that story? And if you are the one that's resistant to change, ask yourself why and what can you do about it so that you don't get left behind. The next part of this, I'm going to talk a little bit about the secret to change. It's one little secret that you have to do and really boils down to believing and having confidence. And how do you get that? You have to invest in yourself. The move to this new remote care AI-enabled environment, we have found that a simple mindset change begins when healthcare professionals start to invest in themselves and truly believe that they can change and make it happen. A quote from Dr. Eric Topol, who's leading cardiologist and digital health leader. The future belongs to clinicians who continue to retool themselves with new knowledge and technology. I want to tell you a story. I think you already know this, right? Most doctors inherently understand this. Typically, most doctors, start off even in medical school as a journalist. You understand the basis of practicing medicine, understanding how to treat patients, diagnose them, do preventative efforts, and how to manage common illnesses and chronic conditions. But most physicians know you have to move to a specialty if you want to solve more complex problems. So you usually decide to invest time and money to become a specialized doctor or learn a specialized skill. And this involves, really being certified and qualified to start to deliver this new skill. But what is the result of that? 9 times out of 10, that means that gain specialized knowledge means increase in new revenue and new opportunities. In the US alone, 65,000 internal medicine doctors, they make on average $249,000. If you have specialists, for instance, nephrologists, which are the kidney doctors, about 10,000 in the United States alone, on average make $363,000. Then if you look at cardiologists, the heart doctors, on average, they make about $520,000. The point of this story is that you have to invest ahead of revenue. Let me say that again. You have to invest ahead of revenue. One simple way that you can really invest in your time, think about new programs, new courses you can take that can kind of elevate your knowledge set. Look, we are offering a masterclass that we're going to talk a little bit about this, right? All the tools and knowledge you need in order to invest in your medical practice so you can get all the tools you need to increase the value of it. And there's going to be a ton of great information on what it means to invest when it comes to these remote care programs, artificial intelligence, and in staffing so that you can grow your medical practice beyond where it is today. If you're interested, you can find a link below where you can sign up at practicevaluecreator.ai www.evolutionofteleradiology.com/masterclass. Go check it out if it makes sense. Last but not least, we're going to talk about the steps that you can do to act now. Here are a few tactics you can start today to get down this road of remote care, as well as using AI to accelerate that. First, you have to provide the vision of where your organization is going if you're going to become a remote patient care first organization. That means articulating it, communicating, and really have a true vision of where you see you're going and how you can go down that path. Next, you need to understand the remote care programs like chronic care management, remote patient monitoring, remote therapeutic monitoring. These programs can get you started on that path, right? But the best part is that they pay for themselves. Not a lot of investment involved, but there is time investment. So I spoke about some of those on that video located here. We talk about remote patient monitoring and how much of a game changer it is. So go check that out to get more learning. And then finally, you need to learn how to bring in automation. And that's really what the power of artificial intelligence. And understanding these tools, they can help you rapidly scale. And scale is just a fancy word saying leverage. You can just put a little bit in and guess what? You can get a lot out. And that's what artificial intelligence does. It can automate, set up processes that you don't have to put a lot of resources in so you can scale out effectively. I talked about that on my last video, the 5 levels of AI use in healthcare. Go check that video out to get more learning. Take these actions today, right? So you can have those advantages. Let me tell you a little story about Kaiser Permanente and electronic health records, or EHRs. Many of you didn't know, Kaiser saw a long time ago, back in the early 2000s, that paper-based records were just slow in treating patients and just really creating errors. The then CEO, George Halverson, championed the digital shift, framing it as essential for quality and safety. So Kaiser, before they were told, invested billions to build one of the first large-scale integrated EHR systems in the US. So as a result, by the time the Affordable Care Act came into play, or ACA, and this was in law, Kaiser's already years ahead. And so they already had the most hospitals and clinics fully integrated with these electronic health records. So when ACA accelerated adoption for others, Kaiser's always in the forefront and really was kind of a pioneer and led the whole country in how to implement these at scale. So while many healthcare organizations kind of struggled with paper charts, Kaiser gained a huge advantage in care coordination, population health, and management. And to this day, they're one of the leading healthcare organizations in the country. First mover advantages go to those who take bold risk to make it happen. That's the whole point. First mover advantage for those who make the bold risk. Do that today. Or the alternative is, think about the life cycle of a radiologist. If you started 20 years ago, you went from working in the hospital clinic to working from home to using AI to do a lot of the work for you. The radiologists who did not adapt lost opportunities. Please don't be like that. Be the ones who start implementing today and moving forward toward that path. I talked a little bit about why you must embrace change, understanding the ways to think through it and get past your fears and your concerns so you can be successful. We also talked a little bit about why you need to invest in yourself. And you know it inherently, but invest in yourself when it comes to learning these tools and technologies. And then last but not least, I gave you simple tactics to act now so you don't hesitate. In the comments below, let us know if you are already implementing remote patient care programs in your organization.